Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani and it's the last day of the week, so this is like our weekend edition. If we can, we tend to tone things down a bit, go for, human angle stories where it is possible. Okay, but very, very serious things happening on the international scene. As you no doubt are well aware, Spain, it's a horrible situation in Spain. It's ongoing, police are investigating the matter. It's such a tragedy, and our hearts go out to all the innocent people in Spain that have become victims of what is now suspected highly to be a terrorist attack. As I said, our hearts go out to them. Now, yesterday we were talking about corruption and the sort of report that has been put out by the Bureau of Statistics in conjunction with the United Nations, and we had all those problems, all those issues that we talked about at great length here. Maybe we could continue that because we'll be having a guest, Daniel Kera. He teaches psychology. Is it psychology or philosophy? In any case, it's for philosophy, actually. But we'll find out from him, being a lecturer and all, and from you at home, what you think about the idea of what the psychology of corruption is in Nigeria. Taking from the fact that, in very, very brief terms, psychology is defined as the scientific study of the mind and how it influences behavior. So if psychology is at, I beg your pardon, if corruption is at the soaring peaks that we heard about in the report, so what exactly has happened to our collective mind? Because that's where it all comes from. So what has happened to our collective mind that has put corruption center stage and in fact has made it ubiquitous? We heard, many people wouldn't have, maybe some people were surprised to have heard that in between the police and the judiciary, they account for most bribe taking and indeed bribe giving by those who are giving it. A lot of people were surprised, but the politicians didn't even get a look in. But so that's going to be our question today. What exactly are your thoughts on what can be referred to as the psychology of corruption in Nigeria, taking that psychology is the scientific study of the mind and how it influences behavior? So what happens to our mind that has now influenced the behavior such as we're seeing? You remember in the early days of the Buhari administration when the National Security Advisor, he was the guy under X-ray, and we got as far as, I think, 100 and something million, and somebody admitted that, well, that one was just for spiritual purposes and, prayers and that kind of a thing. And then we heard some surprising names that were also allegedly involved in the whole matter of getting their own share out of the security vote. But I understand that Sulaiman has called in. Sulaiman, good morning. I think I lost him. Did I lose Sulaiman? Sulaiman? I'm afraid I lost you. See if you can get back in again. Maybe you want to take a crack at the, I don't know if it's a dubious question, but examining the psychology of corruption in Nigeria, your thoughts on it. We'll have a trained mind in the form of a university lecturer, but in the meantime, as a sort of preamble, we wonder what you guys think out there about this whole matter about why corruption is as pervasive. We heard some very interesting theories yesterday, some of them quite unsettling. Somebody said yesterday, one of our guests said yesterday that, I didn't agree with him, but he did put out there that the very formation of the country is based on corruption. That was very distressing to me, and I put it across to him, but he said he stood his ground. Mr. George, good morning. You want to take a crack?
Yeah, thank you, Uncle Yori. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
We are talking about psychology of corruption. Corruption, as we know, Uncle Yori, is anything that is wrong, that is not in the right direction. What brought about what we today know as corruption in our system is greed.
Greed?
Greed.
Okay.
Wanting to have more than you deserve. Not being satisfied with what you have. That is the beginning of corruption. We have failed to come to terms with the fact that whatever comes our way is what we need for that moment. Not what we want, but we all concentrate on what we want. As long as we are not ready to change that attitude, corruption will not stop. Because if you check on Koyori, whenever greed sets into a person, it never ends. What if you have ₦1 million today, you will want to have ₦3 million tomorrow. If you have ₦3 million tomorrow, you want to have ₦1 billion the next day. But as soon as you are able to cultivate satisfaction for what you have, whether little or big, that will mark the end of corruption. All other things are what I would like to describe as facial dressing. Somebody comes to government and says, no, you mustn't take this, you mustn't take that above your entitlement.
Yes.
All those ones are addressing the externalities. But the real problem comes from within. Inability to cultivate satisfaction is what breeds corruption.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. And from what you say, greed, the inability to actually cultivate satisfaction, is also a condition of the mind. Now, it's going to be like that all over the world. But probably the difference with us here in Nigeria, much more so than other places, might be that the systems that everywhere else in the world would be a check on the aberrant mind condition of greed. Everybody will try and get as much as they can if they can get away with it. It would appear that those very systems are not working, and perhaps that's why it's become as pervasive as it has become. I don't know, because we're asking the question about what the psychology of corruption. So thank you very much, Mr. George, for identifying greed and a lack of satisfaction. And what we're going to be doing mentally, I imagine, is be pasting it on the examples that we know, pasting this label on the examples we know, and see how well they fit. I understand someone else wants to take a stab at the question. Ishak in Benue State. Good morning, sir. Are you there in Benue State? Good morning. We just lost the call. Interesting. We just, it's Friday. We're sort of toning it down a bit, and we're looking at some of the human conditions. So Mr. George from Ikeja has, taken a first stab at what he sees as the psychology of corruption, and he says it all goes back to greed, which is, now I have another guy from Kaduna. Pius in Kaduna, good morning, sir. Pius, Kaduna?
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. What would be your thoughts?
Yes, the topic of today is a very interesting one. Yeah, psychology of corruption. It has to do with the state of mind. Okay? So lack of contentment is the first factor that contributes to corruption. But the fundamental factor here is poverty that is eating deep into our own fabric. That is the one that is making the common one to be corrupt. I get my point. The common man to be corrupt. But the person that has what it entails in order to earn a living, that he just go ahead to be corrupt, that person is lack of contentment. And that is the reason why you see most people are now dying, because they always want to live above their own income. And
one moment, Pius. One moment, Pius. From what you've said so far, it would seem to me that you could distill what you've said so far into the statement that, therefore, all poor people will necessarily be corrupt. Is that what you're saying?
No. Not at all.
Oh, okay.
I say must.
But
must. It's must for people. The reason why they are corrupt, because you know the standard of living. When you are just trying, hello?
yes, I'm here. I can still hear you.
When they are trying to even take care of their own immediate needs in their own family, they couldn't because of their own poor earnings. So if there is anything that will make them to dip their hand in order to be corrupt, they will be tempted to do that. That was what I meant, not old poor people. It's not old people. Some people, they even want to die to the remaining poor and without being corrupt.
Okay.
There are some people that if they are tempted, they will not resist it. I think it's my only little take or submission this morning. May God continue to bless Nigeria, bless TVC, and bless everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Interesting that we're hearing this. I'm trying to keep tab. We started off with the principal reason being from our first caller, greed. And then you can also look at that as a lack of contentment, which you also, Pius, have sort of agreed with largely, especially the lack of contentment part. But then you do say it doesn't, and you said poverty would be something that you would throw out there as a main ball before the other smaller balls. But when you look at it, I wonder how much room, how much opportunity exists for poor people to really be corrupt. Because you find that it's rich people, and I don't know if you can talk about poverty and the lack of contentment with the same degree of, the way it would relate to a poor person. There are poor people that do honest things. There are poor people that will not cross that line. You know of people handing in, handsome sums of money, forgotten in a taxi cab, forgotten at the airport. We see examples that warm your heart and say there is still hope. So I'm wondering how proper the reason of poverty is when we're trying to understand the psychology of corruption. Mazi Okorafo, thank you for calling in too. Good morning.
Good morning, Sayori.
Yeah.
Honestly speaking, the psychology of corruption, as we just presented to us this morning, you see, corruption is mindset of human being, the perception of way of life. You see, the perception of way of life presently we have in this country. Let's look about selfishness. Now, when you talk about selfishness, you as a human being, God created you and you have your own destiny. God has destined you to be this. And it's not just that many people want to deviate from what God has already destined. That is what makes them to push their hands to go and take what does not do. Now let's look about the home bringing. When you are in a home where the father and mother, who are the main bone of house, instead of them to take care of you as a child, they will now, when you see some friends coming, you see them discussion issues that have to do with something that is outside from you. A child starts learning, and that is why it is always self-evident. If you come to a house, see where they have pot outside, they have their family inside. That when you go to that pot and sit and discuss whatever I want to do, you want to give the person. But instead of having somebody in your house, and the children will be listening what they are doing. When they say, let's think about student union government. You see a child who is the president of the student union or a secretary. Now, instead of you to make use of the money the students have contributed to the school system, you start using the money to go and rent a house outside and buy a car. Now, you have started to remove that selfishness from the university. When you graduate, what else are you going to do? When you get to your office now, you like to embezzle the money that belongs to you for the running of the organization. That leads to a very bad perception about human beings we are facing. That's why I used to say, if a student union government, they are not moving fine, what the university authority should dissolve them or set an investigation panel to investigate them. Your students, they contribute 20 million. Mm-hmm. What have you done with the money? Mm-hmm. No proper accountability. And at the end of the day, the students, government, the ESCO will leave the government, carry the money and the school fees like that. These are the problems that our approach of this. The approach we are looking presently is very bad because we like to live above our means. A child will go to the market, maybe you started work as a graduate. Your salary is 40,000 or 50. You go and buy a shoe of 40,000 naira from the market. Now, how much will you use to feed? How much will you use to pay transport? These are the things that make people to dig hands to wage another thing. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Mazi Okorafor. And if you're just joining us and wondering what this is all about, it's Friday. We're toning it down a bit, and it's still very, very important. And all of this is coming from psychology being defined. There's so many definitions, but if you were to take the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, for instance, it'll define corruption as, I beg your pardon, it'll define psychology as the scientific study of the mind and how it influences behavior. And since the behavior, the corruption behavior is as serious as it is, so much so that a government arrived in power on its pledge to fight it, we're looking at what the general populace thinks about the psychology of corruption. Now, we started off from the first person taking a crack at it and saying greed fundamentally is behind all of this. But what happened to greed? I imagine it's been with us from the beginning of time, I imagine. But there are systems to check that because greed is seen as an antisocial behavior. But greed is one thing. Dishonesty is another. I'm wondering, I'm trying to figure it out if you can be greedy without being dishonest. I don't know. But where I'm leading to is, look, every Nigerian knows the story that they've been told of back in the day, maybe 100 years ago, maybe less, maybe a little more, of the way, one of the ways our people used to trade. They would put their merchandise by the wayside, I understand. They would indicate how much it takes. And nobody would be manning the store, the store, let's call it a store. And people would come along, take what they wanted, and put the appropriate amount down. Now, I imagine every people across the country has their own version of that story. So there was a time when we trusted each other and when we expected people to do the right thing. Of course, we know that nowadays, as has been explained by the greed offering, somebody is just going to come along and pack it all away. And so I guess that's what I'm leading at. What happened to our mind to take us from putting merchandise on the road, indicating how much it costs, and then going our way, and the customers would behave appropriately? What happened between then, maybe 100 years ago, I don't know the dates, and now? That probably is what the human condition that we're trying to figure out. What led to all of that? Well, our guests are here. Thank you very much for taking the first stab at it, because that's where we shall take it up from when we now speak with, professionals about this whole subject about the psychology of corruption. In other words, the study of the mind and how it explains or influences behavior. Clearly, our mind has made a paradigm shift from those days of unmanned stores up and down villages in Nigeria. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. And if you've just joined us, you're very, very welcome. We're getting into pop academics here, so to speak. If of all the explanations and all the meanings of psychology, for instance, we limit ourselves to just one dictionary, in this case, the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, if you've been with us, I've quoted the explanation of the advanced learners saying that, well, psychology can be taken as the scientific study of the mind and how it influences our behavior. Now, our guest, Dr. Dan Ekere, he teaches philosophy at the University of Lagos. So I said, hey, hang on, philosophy and psychology. Okay, Oxford Advanced Learner, what's philosophy? And it says, well, that's the study of the nature and meaning of the universe and of human life. And I'm happy that Dr. Dan Ekere confused the place a bit more by saying there's actually the psychology of philosophy. Dr. Dan Ekere, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on. But all of these big words that we're playing around with in a light way on this Sunday, they're actually about something fundamental to the integrity of our society. We've often heard from commentators that if we're not careful, corruption is going to do us in. and we have to move to prevent that. And so if you're going to move, psychology, I mean, psychology being what it is, it explains that it's the condition of the mind. Now, what can we do? Because one of the biggest things to shift, affect, amend is the mind, the human mind. And meanwhile, we're spending so much in this fight, and it's actually in the mind that we need to adjust. That's why I imagine it's as difficult as it is. You can have all the slogans in the world, have all the jingles. Even the Bible has not cut much out of the problem, because from the beginning of time, thou shalt not steal. The courts are still full of people defending themselves, and the jails are also full. So what would you say, Dan, is the psychology of corruption, so that we can better understand why we have these surprising names coming up when corruption cases are mentioned? Somebody has proffered before you arrived that poverty is his number one. What would be your comment on that?
Let me begin by saying that the human being, if you look at his makeup in relation to his source, for us who are Christians, the Bible records that God created man, and that before, you see, when God was doing creation, there was no meeting as to let us do this, let us do that. We were just hearing, let there be light, let there be this. But when it came to man, there was a meeting, sort of. It said, let us make man. Among the Godhead and all the whatever.
Okay, that's going into philosophy. Yeah, that is beginning to be conk.
So let us make man. Let us make man in our own image.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for those last three words. In our own image.
And after our likeness.
And after our likeness, for the Christian perspective.
Yes. Yes. Now, the one who said, let us make man after our own image and after our likeness, we are not made of dust. So you can see that the human being, as the Bible recorded, was made from an earthly, material, which is already a form of corruption.
Oh dear! Even that early on.
Of course.
Yes.
It was not impossible for God to say, "Let there be man," and there would have been. You see, but He had His own reason for saying, "Okay, let us make man," and they decided to go scientific, try to, mold man from earth and all the rest. Now, for the woman, we understood she came from the rib. So if we go by all of that, was God made of those stuff? Or those who had the meeting that let's make man in our own image, we are then made of the same stuff. So in a sense, you could see that there is that thing already in the nature of man from the point of view of creation, because he already has the tendency to want to, because of where he came from, want to do all manner of acquisition. All right? Now, there is no part of the world where human beings are not corrupt. The only thing we are talking about is the level of corruption.
And the systems put in place to checkmate it.
All right? Now, if you look at it from that perspective, much of the so-called corruption that we are involved in, we were actually taught. We were taught. And you could link so many of them to, our contact with the rest of the world. Because
our contact first is with our family.
Yeah, but from the family here, in fact, I refer to Obaru Ikime. Obaru Ikime wrote a book, The Isoko People. All right? Now, in that book, he mentioned that the act of lying on oath became prominent after the invasion of, the place by the West. That the traditional Isoko man was not used to, because there were ways of checkmating, and as well, you see, our system of justice then was just not just a question of evidence, come and prove in court. The lawyer was not there when the crime was committed. The judge was not there when the crime was committed. And as a matter of fact, the judge imposes his will. That is why it's called a lord. He lords whatever he wants over you. Yes. And as your lordship pleases, becomes a position. You see, but here, we don't take our justice system based on just those written things. There was a spiritual aspect to it.
Yes.
And that is why we did all manner of the rituals, such that you can dictate, you go by truth.
Yes.
In our system of justice.
Okay.
Truth was part of it.
Not shenanigans, not legal shenanigans.
No, not at all. Not just the question of, okay, because you could use, let's assume I have a machete or a gun. Maybe it's the only type and it's known to be mine. Somebody now takes the gun to shoot somebody else, and you can trace that the bullet came from this gun. This is the kind of bullet my gun uses. That's already an evidence that my gun was used to kill. So there will not be a problem of who owns this gun. You say you are the one, okay. Then you would have been the one who killed this. You say, no, okay, how did it get to somebody else? All right? Already there's an established position that it was my bullet that killed the person. But it is difficult for you to tell whether I was the one that shot the gun or not. You see, but in African system then, there was an aspect of it that the spirituality of that issue will come in, such that you go to different, places where this can be established, and the actual person. But along the line, the issue of falsification began to.
I understand what you're saying, the westernization and all of that, and even of our judicial system, of the legal system. But even, I'm not sure if it still happens till today, but you're sworn by the Bible, by the Quran, or if you happen to be a believer in the traditional.
Even the believers in traditional setup will not agree, because they know that they can't swear falsely and go away. But you can swear because God is merciful. So you can swear, of course, you can swear with the Bible and nothing will happen.
But the deities were
they are not merciful.
They were much less discerning.
Of course, they will attack you the moment you tell lies about something. All right? So there was a kind of, instant, justice of a sort, in a manner.
And the morality was forced to be much higher.
Of course, because you know that, as I speak to you, there are places where you dare not steal. And nobody will dare to checkmate you. But there are places where you cannot just take somebody else's thing, except you tell the person. It is because of what is there. All right? You see, but even inside churches, people steal.
Indeed.
Of course they do, including pastors.
So there's a general collapse in morality.
Of course.
And it's primarily because people have come to understand that, by and large, if luck is on their side, they're going to get away with it.
And as a matter of fact, after all those events, still kill, and when you come to God genuinely, God is merciful. He's going to forgive you.
Well, so
a lot of people are trying to play around all these, things. And essentially, going by the legal system, or the system of our justice, legal system of legal justice now, you find out that the actual committers of the crime might not even be punished for as long as they have the resources.
Yes.
It is those who do not have
the legal
resources.
Dexterity.
Of course.
To wangle their way out of it.
They have what
then
it takes.
Society will say, you're free.
You get it. They have what it takes to pay the best lawyers who has what it takes, who have what it takes to do all the arguments. And they can as well, like we are hearing, even pay judges.
Yes, yes. So, the corruption report did say that up to 80% is between the judiciary and the police. So that is you see a problem here.
Yes. So you can see that the question of corruption, apart from the question of man being of a kind.
Yes.
Now the only thing, you see, look at it very carefully. When Nigerians travel abroad, including the ministers, they obey rules because they know that in those societies, laws are not only obeyed, they are enforced. At least, how many charges were proffered against Ibori in London before he owned up? But here in Nigeria, there were about 170-something.
And he was not guilty of
any of them.
Of any of them.
Of any. It could be a case of maybe no diligent prosecution and all manner of things. You see, so issue of technicalities come in. So, when it comes to this Western system of justice, technically, you don't, because of technicalities, throw away what is. But when you go to the court, technicality can lead to, the throwing away of a suit. And all manner of things. So when you look at all the systems, the environment we operate in tends to give room for corruption.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Well, we're looking, and we have the help of a university lecturer to try and understand in a very, very basic form, what the psychology of corruption is. That is, psychology being the scientific study of the mind and how it influences behavior. And you've just heard from there that perhaps unwittingly, the religions, the major religions, might inadvertently be fueling it, because Dan said, after he had explained all about, you know, the religions and the part they play, Dan had said that we have a merciful God. You go back to him in the right way, he's still going to forgive you. And there are people who are going to just say, now this anchor, this I can anchor on this one. In fact, there are probably people who are saying that, look, I can't resist this temptation. I'm going to do it. And we've seen example of people trying to go and make amends in church by paying tithes, making large offerings. And we know that because we've heard pastors speak out against that practice and say that that's not going to happen in my church. You come to my church with an unusual offering, we want to know where it came from. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. And if you're just tuning in, you've just tuned into our pop psychology, pop philosophy edition of the program, where we're trying to understand, against the backdrop of the report by the Bureau of Statistics in conjunction with the United Nations body, that the rate of corruption in Nigeria is humongous, and up to 80% of the corruption, and by the way, you put a figure to it, between the years 2015 and 2016, in the region of 400 billion naira, or $40 billion in just that 1 year. We've since been joined by lawyer Tony Dania. He's a public affairs analyst as well. Thank you very, very much for coming. Now, you've also been in the studio a few minutes before coming on. Yes. And so you heard that, that part where we say that our morality, now that we have Western law and, you know, erudite lawyers and court procedures and the law of evidence and all of that, it's a much, much more involved, elaborate and different things than our deities used to tolerate. Back in the day, you being a Nigerian yourself, you know about escapades with the deities. You dare not swear falsely. You do so, it's instantaneous. There's no adjournment. The deities will not allow an adjournment so that we can consider something and then come back. I want you to comment on the part that, we've heard the part that the religions have played in fueling corruption. Is there a sense in which Western law, as imported back to us, has also taken it to different heights?
Yeah. When you acquire knowledge, and you acquire civilization, there are other aspects of civilization that you have to tolerate. In
other words, collateral damage.
Exactly. For example, those days of when we go to deities are gone. The practice has been reduced drastically all over the world, even in Nigeria. So because of civilization. Now, if we can reduce technicalities in courts and shorten the procedures for arguing a case, like they have tried to do it. You brought up written addresses where you don't need to come and waste the time of the court, just write. But then when you write, the judges need to read.
Yes.
And then when so many cases are there and so many write-ups are submitted to a judge, he has to read them. And then what about the requisite comfort a judge needs to enable the judge to dispense justice? A lot of things are peculiar here in Nigeria. I heard my colleague and lecturer talked about Ibori's case, for example, you know. So I think even when we're going to deities those days, there is a procedure, there is a process, you know, libations, incantations, and the praise talking. So the same thing, it's just that, and I'm aware too that some of these priests of deities are also compromised sometimes. So in the churches, we've heard of pastors being arrested for stealing the money that belongs to churches. Same thing,
and those are supposed to be houses of morality.
Exactly.
They teach us morals.
Yes, but can I deviate a little bit?
Well, so far as the deviation is all about understanding the psychology of corruption. that is the scientific study of the mind and how it influences our behavior.
No, my deviation goes to your introductory remark that we are talking about the Bureau of Statistics, talking about...
well, yeah, I just mentioned that that was yesterday's program.
Oh,
that was yesterday's program where that we devoted the program to.
Yeah, but I heard that, what I heard was that bribery, or the amount paid as bribe.
Yes.
Bribery is a part of corruption.
Indeed.
Corruption is broader.
Yes, much broader.
Much broader.
Yes.
Now, my take on that is that I responded online when the Bureau came up with that. And I said, look, convince us, because I know bribery is done secretly and most often done by cash. How did you capture all this to come up with that bogus figure?
The fact that you call it bogus shows immediately that you don't put much store on that report.
Yes.
You know.
I expect a report.
Therefore, it means that you also question probably the fact that the report says that between the police and the judiciary, which you have said have all sorts of processes, they account for 80% of this $40 billion US between the years 2015 and 2017. Now, what you're saying is, how did you get those figures?
Yes, because you see, if the EFCC comes up to say that X has X amount in his account and it was wrongly paid, I will believe that because they can be called to account for it. When you come up, yes, the Bureau takes care of statistics of events and activities that are important to the nation. No, bribery is important. We need to reduce it. How did you get it? If you want, for example, if you want to bribe the police, it is done secretly. So how did you capture it? Do you have a camera set out everywhere that captured all this bribery? Or you have a bank account where bribery are recorded and you can come up with a figure? Or you did an approximation in your house and come up to give us that figure? I'm surprised, and I'm surprised that the figure the agency gave without giving a convincing...
If I even have to add to that, I want to believe the figure might even be more, the one they capture is the one they gave.
The one they gave.
The other ones that we are giving on the road,
it's going to be more than that.
What I'm saying is that...
Yeah, but I get the point you are making. To know
that you want to be able to verify
tell us
the evidence that they say they have.
You cannot just come up and say bribery 400 billion per year. How did you know?
It's even a Bureau of Statistics.
Exactly.
Statistics have to do with figures.
Exactly.
So I'm sure they must have done their due diligence
for bribery. How do you do it for bribery?
They must have.
If you talk of corruption,
the issue of judges that were bribed, figures were involved.
Yes.
So they could be part of the...
Because what I'm saying,
let us differentiate Tony, an allegation from...
Tony, I don't want to... I beg your pardon, Tony. Yes. I don't want to go into this very important aspect that you are pointing out. Okay. Let that be to one side.
All right.
We're looking at the psychology of corruption, and to maybe better set us on the track again, the very first caller who came in had said that, you know what, greed, number one. If the parameters you have set is that the simplistic definition of psychology is the scientific study of the mind and how it influences behavior, coming from that, then greed and a lack of contentment is what is giving you lawyers, work and income.
The psychology of corruption in Nigeria context has a lot of peculiarities. We see our children are reading, they are seeing us, they are seeing senators being rich, they are seeing people displaying wealth without being asked how they became rich. You are making them to feel they need to become like that. So you see, until the system is changed.
Let me understand this, because I like what you just said, because it's also been said by people who study psychology as it relates to television programs, advertisements, and the influence that it has on our children. For instance, they say, the psychologists say that when you look at programs we're getting today, that violence is glamorized as much as it is. Our kids are probably picking up on it and thinking of it as a thing to do. Sexuality, the same thing. So you are saying that by seeing eminent people in our society in their ostentatious consumption, not just ostentatious consumption, you see approval by the society in terms of them getting national honors, they must be invited to any big events. You're saying that all of this is actually reinforcing it in the minds of our children.
Of course, of course. Every youth in Nigeria, an average usual to become a millionaire, a multi-millionaire, without necessarily doing anything. Nigerian opportunity, yes, without prejudice to the fact that we are faced with a lot of corrupt practices and inactive attitude of persons who are supposed to be governing us. A lot are there. You see, Nigeria, opportunities abound here.
Well, I understand the submission that greed is number one. That was Mr. George from the beginning.
Yes.
He also added concomitant...
greed greed among...
Lack of contentment.
Yes, lack of contentment.
But somebody else now said poverty.
This point, poverty, lack of contentment, greed. Greed is the same thing as lack of contentment.
Of course,
now, if you say greed and poverty, what is the cause of poverty?
Okay, wait a minute. We'll come back to that. Let's put Goke's opinion on the program as well. Good morning, Goke in Ikotun.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling in, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
A very good morning to the gentlemen at the studio.
Morning,
good morning. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir. My view on this, my take on this view, like the first caller rightly posited, corruption and the philosophy or the psychology,
the psychology of it.
Yeah.
The human condition that feeds it.
Is a sin of the mind. Whether you like it or not, poverty does have a role to play in corruption. But though...
Yes, are all poor people therefore corrupt?
No, that's what I'm saying. Poverty though has a role to play in corruption. But no. As the psychology of corruption is a sin of the mind, it has to do with your person. Whether you are poor or not, it depends. That is where the scrupulous, your scruples comes in to play. The unscrupulous element in the society does go with this corruption thing. The rich people, the elite, are the most corrupt people, not the poor. So, yes, they are still going by it every day. I feel the only thing we can do is to change our system.
Which system? Which system, sir?
Thank you, sir. The then Minister of Finance was formerly in First Bank, World Bank, and she did very well. Excuse me, sir.
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, according to us at the World Bank, it is because the system then does not allow her to show a corrupt element. When she came back to Nigeria, she was corrupt, or she did some, because at a point during her time, she said if $2 million was stolen, missing, American government will look for it. You can imagine.
Well, yes. I'm not going to travel with you down that road, but I understand your right to say what you're saying. It's just that we should be very, very careful about libel.
Okay,
you know, you don't have any basis for that statement.
Let me rephrase this.
Should have used alleged.
What I'm saying, yeah, you can say alleged. I don't even want to talk about that.
Yes.
Let's just change our system here. Our system allows for corruption to thrive. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
If we could change our system, the people will change over time. I know I can't drive without driver's license now. If I'm being held on the road and I'm driving without driver's license, I know definitely I'll be dealt with. So we all know this is what we should do. We make our own laws to suit us.
Thank you very much, Goke. I appreciate your call, and you've made a fundamental point, I think, for the purposes of this conversation about what the psychology of corruption is. And you've also alluded to it, that in this society here, when you do the wrong thing, you know you can overcome the strictures that would tend to challenge you. For instance, driving with a license.
Yes, but
whereas there's no negotiation about it in perhaps other places.
Yes.
You drive without a license, for example, you're going to be fined or whatever. But here, you can probably wangle your way out of it. Let me put it discreetly.
Thank you very much. You said it's a thing of the mind, that is our mindset, agreed. But you see, the mind of a child, like the psychologists would say, is a tabula rasa. A tabula rasa means it's a clean slate. That is why when a child is growing, the child is innocent, he knows nothing. So the environment impacts in putting things in the mind of the child.
Indeed.
So
And television has become a large part of that environment.
Yes,
mass media has become a large part of that environment.
The immediate persons that contact the child influences the child and implant things in the mind of the child. So the child grow up while the mind is adopting things first within the environment and later external. So the mindset must be changed. That is why I said, if, for example, wealth is not celebrated without investigating the source of that wealth, it will change things. But let me quickly tell you something. I want to commend Nigerians for one thing. We are very good at adapting. If you bring a law and the leaders are showing example of obeying that law, Nigerians will adapt.
Okay.
And you don't even need to force Nigerians or fight Nigerians to get them to comply.
I wonder if what you're saying has any bearing on what we hear about in certain societies in the world, Dan, take China, for example, that are trying to block out Western influences, the decadent consumption. They will say that a capitalist society it deserves to enjoy the wealth that it makes. That's their philosophy, and so they have no problem flaunting great wealth. Certain societies, rightly or wrongly, will see such living as decadent and want to shield their people from being influenced by such ideas. I'll come back and you probably give me your impression on it, but right now I have someone from home, Mr. Okpara in the VI. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, Uncle Yori, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
And good morning to the guests here.
Sure.
Good morning, my brother.
Well, Uncle Yori, you know, the Bible we read said, when you spare a rod, you spoil a child. And that is the problem of corruption in Nigeria.
Okay. We don't have systems to check it.
The rod have been spared already on people. So the child have already gone astray. Many people who are corrupt in this nation, there is no example. The whole thing is just garbage. Look at the yesterday program. The beneficiary of how many millions for police and the judiciary. And these are these two companies in Nigeria. They are very, very corrupt.
Okay, Mr. Okpara, sorry, I've run out of time, but I thank you for calling in. You're saying we spared the rod in this society. In fact, we've thrown the rod away. There is no rod anymore. I understand what you're saying, sir. Now, Dan, that whole idea where other societies try to block out what both you gentlemen have described as influences on innocent minds, could that conceivably be where it's coming from?
Yeah, you see, the question of influences on the mind is not static. You see, the mind is something that adapts, and it can adapt to any system. You see, but which one will you want to adapt to? That you are honest and you are wretched, or that you are dishonest and you are comfortable? And
you are healed by society.
You get it? Because let's assume Lazarus made heaven, Abraham made heaven. Which style will you want to use to get to heaven? You want to go to heaven like Lazarus or go to heaven like Abraham? Though Abraham was not, presented as corrupt. You see, but the way society moves determines to a large extent the way government moves determines to a large extent how the people, react and respond, how they behave. So much of the crisis we're having are a failure of government, truly.
Yes.
You see, because in those societies where people tend to be law-abiding and the rest, and corruption is at the lowest ebb, it is not because they are saints. It is simply because they know that there is a system that can check such excesses.
And that you're not likely to get away with it.
At all.
But and here, the opposite is the case.
The safest way to live in Nigeria is to be corrupt.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to leave it on
that
very
worrying note. You need to steal government money
note.
For you to survive, because when you make 300 billion, with 1 billion you would have settled the case.
Which is a paradox.
So you have 99 billion to live with. That is the system the government is promoting.
It's a paradox of morality.
Are you getting it? Yeah. Now, we have destroyed all the values such that today nobody looks at those things anymore.
But we now have, and I don't have time to discuss it, but we now have a ministry of, not a ministry, something...
Orientation agency.
Yeah. National Orientation.
Does the National Orientation Agency teach children at home and the rest.
Please, before we run it off, I just want to say
10
something.
seconds, no more than 10 seconds.
Yes, there's this panel set up by the federal government on asset recovery, and Obla is the head. And I read, if it is true, that he said he will go after the banks and other, and he said duplicity of investigative agencies is not a problem. I think the federal government should call him to order. Otherwise, they will have a crisis that they cannot control and it will embarrass them. What are we talking about? We have seen panels. I just want to use the opportunity to say this. It's disturbing my mind seriously.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tony Dania, lawyer and public affairs analyst, and Dr. Daniel Kere, lecturer, Department of Philosophy, University of Lagos. Thank you for tolerating our pop, soft philosophy and psychology this morning.
The time is up? Or?
Totally. In fact, we're overrunning. That's our program at home today. There's no program tomorrow on Saturday and Sunday because we don't do weekends, but God willing, we'll be back at 10:30 on Monday morning with a fresh edition of the program. I'm Yori Folarin. Bye-bye for now. Have a great weekend.